Hi, I'm Deboki and this is Okie Dokie Boki, and today I am going to be answering some of your questions. Question number 1. Did you ever have a moment where you questioned your education/career choices? How have you kept yourself motivated throughout the process? Yes, I definitely have questioned my choices and am still constantly questioning them. So I think like any crisis, my crisis can be traced back to high school. I was one of those kids who really liked both science and humanities, and one of the feelings that I had when I was applying for colleges and figuring out what I wanted to do next, I started to feel like I really needed to make a choice or I was just going to go through college very confused. So I decided to focus on the sciences. So I went to Caltech, which is a very science and engineering oriented school. I did double major in English, but because the school itself is not geared towards humanities, that coursework is not necessarily geared towards training students in the humanities the way that like a larger university or a liberal arts university might be. For where I was at that time, deciding to focus on the sciences was the right choice to make. I just didn't know what it was I wanted to do. I knew that I liked writing, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do with that impulse. And in some ways, I'm really glad I decided to focus on science because there's just so much technical stuff to learn that getting to learn it in that environment taught me so much about the world, like both like the science behind it, but also just about myself and how I perceive the world around me. At the same time, it meant that I took a step away from the kind of careers that would eventually become more interesting to me. When I finished college, I sort of followed the path that a lot of people in my family have pursued, that a lot of students who go to a school like Caltech pursue, which is I did my PhD. And again, I think for where I was at that time, it was the right choice to make given what I knew. But I also went into my PhD knowing that I might not want to pursue a career in research. And I think one of the things that I regret is not being more honest with myself and everyone around me about that fact earlier on in my career. I would kind of just say like, yeah, maybe I'm interested in writing to like a few of my friends, but I wouldn't really take myself seriously in that regard because I was very insecure about it. And so it's not so much that I question my career choices or my education, but I do question the fact that it took me so long to just be really upfront about that part of what I'm interested in. Sorry. He's hyper. And I think if I had been more upfront about that, there's a lot of things that I could have done a lot earlier on in grad school that would have set me up for the kind of career choices that I ended up wanting to make later on. In terms of keeping myself motivated through the process, I think the hardest part is the insecurity of feeling like, am I making the right choice in leaving this previous career path that I was going down? Am I just trying to switch away because I'm scared of something, because I think it's too hard? Like, am I actually committed to this choice? And that's one of the reasons, again, that I wish I had talked to people about like this transition I wanted to make earlier on, because I think I would have appreciated that I really did want to make this choice. And I think the thing that's kept me the most motivated through the process is the support of so many of the people around me. My friends and family have given me a ton of support. Having that kind of support from your friends when you're making this weird switch, it means a lot. And my husband and my parents have both been tremendously supportive in really pragmatic ways, but also emotionally. Like, they are really committed to like helping me figure out what I'm doing and helping me work through a lot of those insecurities. It's funny, my parents are scientists, so they're definitely the paths that they're most comfortable giving advice on are the paths that I've deviated away from, but they are so supportive of me making this huge leap into another career path and are trying to help me in whatever way they can. My husband is the one who has to tend to my insecurities the most, and he is tremendously helpful. He's been the one who's been the most like, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, like if you need to take time to figure it out, like that's okay. You're in a position where like we can figure it out. If you're in this position where you're making this choice, finding the people who you can be vulnerable with in that way is really valuable, because people will surprise you. They will be much more supportive if you're really committed to what you're doing and if you're really sincere about it. So yeah, I think that's the thing that's helped the most. The other thing is just making sure that you are okay with failure. And this is true whether or not you're in a transition, but I think when you're in a transition, that insecurity of like, am I making the right choice and jumping to a completely different career can compound like how shitty failure feels and how shitty rejection feels. And so I think it's been a real process for me to like not let failure demotivate me, not let it discourage me. And that just takes time, and making sure that at the end of the day, you know why you're making any kind of change that you're making, and just trying to find something secure in that to hold on to. Question number 2. I would love to hear more about what sort of options there are within science communication and what you think an ideal work situation for you would be. Science communication, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, covers a wide range of careers. It can be something like being an editor for a journal, so figuring out whether or not to accept a paper for publishing, for publication, or it can be something kind of more on the end that I've been interested in, which is communicating science to a public audience. So that might be something like writing for a magazine or a newspaper about popular science ideas, or in my case, working more in video and multimedia, so that could be something like podcasts as well. Yeah, again, to convey science to a popular audience. And that could be both someone who is a public-facing figure, like, you know, Bill Nye the Science Guy, or someone who's more behind the scenes. This is definitely a topic that's worth going into a lot more discussion, so I'm going to return to this in a few more weeks and discuss it in more detail when I've had a little bit more time to work on it. The second part of this question is, what would your ideal work situation be? And that is also a great question. What's really important to me is to basically be in a workplace where I can learn quickly, learn independently, and also developing a lot of my ideas. I have a lot of ideas in terms of what kind of content I want to make and how I want to make it. There are definitely media companies that I think my skill set and ideas and all of that, like, I think they're good matches for that. But also I think another way to make this happen is going to be freelancing, so that I can take the time to build skills on my own, but also still build up my portfolio and make connections, and also, you know, earn an income, because that's important. I think a lot of my ideal work situation actually resembles grad school, but maybe with a little bit less dysfunction and a slightly healthier work balance. One of the things I loved about grad school was having that independence with your own project to really just pursue strange ideas that, you know, you're not sure if they're gonna work out, but like you're just committed to. So something that lets me kind of like do that in this new context would be amazing. Question number 3, at what point did you decide that you didn't want to continue with an academic career? So I sort of talked about this in question 1. When I started grad school, I knew that I liked the idea of science writing and science communication careers. I just didn't fully commit to it. I think when it became really clear to me that I was just not enthused about a career in research was kind of halfway through grad school. I had an opportunity that opened up for me in terms of an academic career. And the reason why that moment was so important to me was because before that, whenever I would think about not wanting to go down an academic path, the thing that would hold me back was that I was worried that the only reason I didn't want to do academia is because I thought it was hard, that it was just like, I don't want to do it because I don't think it's going to happen for me, or I don't want to deal with the failure or the rejection of it. And when I had this moment where the potential for failure and rejection was much lower, I still didn't want to do it. And so that's when it sort of like started to sink in that no, I just kind of maybe don't want to do academia. And especially once I started going to conferences and networking events and like career development events that were oriented around science communication and science policy, that's the first time where I felt like, oh, this is what I want to do. Like, especially the first time that I went to AAAS, the conference for the American Association for the Advancement of Science. That was the first conference I met to where I realized like there was this whole other world that I was so much more interested in. And yeah, I think that's like really what helped me realize that I didn't want to continue in an academic career. The next question, what are your favorite K-dramas? Oh my god, it's been so long since I've watched one, like all the way through. So I definitely have gone through phases of being super obsessed with K-dramas. One of the classics that I love is Coffee Shop Prince. That one's super cute. I really, really like Signal. It's such a good mystery show. It's just super well done. And I think the writer for that wrote Kingdom, which is the news show on Netflix that I've only watched the first 2 or 3 episodes of, but I've been super into. It's a historical zombie show, which is amazing. Oh yeah, one of the ones that I like reviewed on this channel that I loved was W, which I think is just such a cool almost meta, well, definitely meta, it's more meta about books, but it's such a cool show, combining mystery and, yeah, romance, of course, and also, yeah, this whole meta thing about storytelling. Okay, next question. What is the best thing about not being in grad school anymore? Everything? Not really, not everything. There are definitely things about grad school I miss, especially like being around other grad students and like being around other scientists. That's something I definitely miss. What I don't miss is the stress of it, and just feeling so completely consumed by it. It's nice to be a little bit more removed from that life and feeling a little bit more like, oh right, there's a whole world to have perspective on. So the next question is, what is something you want to make time for now that you have more freedom to do stuff that isn't in academia? So I am filming this video February 13th. By the end of February, hopefully I will have this video up by then, but maybe not. By the end of February though, I'm very excited because I will live with my husband. So my husband and I, we have been together for like 11 years. It's been a pretty long time. We met while we were in college, and we have lived in the same city for maybe 7 months out of those 11 years. We got married almost 5 years ago, so like this year is a really big year, just like anniversary wise. It's also a really big year because for the first time we're gonna actually get to live together, which is, yeah, super exciting. And a big part of the reason why we haven't been able to live together is because we've both been at different stages of our academic career. We've been able to make it work. Like, we've been able to do long distance in a way that I think, like, you know, for all of its frustrations, has also been really good for us. Like, I think it's helped us be able to like make a lot of career and personal choices that, you know, we've been able to develop in a certain way that wouldn't have been possible if we weren't long distance. But at the same time, long distance is long distance. We like each other, we want to live together. There's a lot of things in terms of like family and personal life that we want to be able to do that we can't do if we live in separate places. That's definitely hands down the thing that I'm most excited for. Semi-related to this, where would you most want to live in the US or the whole world? So my husband grew up in Texas, in Austin, which is an awesome city. So he's super used to warm weather. I lived for a long time in Southern California, so I'm also used to warm weather. We're gonna be living in Western Massachusetts, which of all of the many wonderful things that it is not a warm weather place. So, you know, there's a chance like we're just never gonna live in a warm weather place, but definitely one of the things I would love most is to live somewhere warm. I loved SoCal. I loved living there. Living near LA is awesome because there's so much good food. Same with Austin, great food. I also really enjoy, like, I've been living in New York City for the past like 7-8 months. I love New York City and my parents are here, so I would love living in New York. There's so much good food here. If I were living outside of the US, in terms of just cities that I've loved, Edinburgh is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to. So it would be, I don't know about like in terms of just like basic living expenses and anything like that, and politically, all of those factors I don't know anything about, but living in a place like Edinburgh I feel like would just be like a dream. I think Hong Kong would also be amazing, but Hong Kong is so expensive. But yeah, food is good. It's warm, maybe too warm in the summer, but it has great public transportation. So yeah, those would be like my key elements: good food, good weather, and good public transportation. If you can get like the perfect combination of all three, let me know what that perfect combination is, because I will add that to my list of places I would love to live in the future. Next question, what do you wish you knew about science/STEM careers before you started grad school? I grew up with like a pretty high awareness of science and STEM careers because of the family that I've lived, like grown up with, makes it sound like they're my siblings. The family that I like come from, the family that raised me. Sorry, again, I may even sound like I was raised by a pack of wolves, except instead of a pack of wolves, it was a pack of scientists, which is kind of true. Anyways, the point is that I was like pretty aware of a lot of science careers. I think what I would have loved to know more about are the range of careers that are adjacent to science and that I think are still really highly scientific, even if you're not doing research. So again, like that goes towards me now being more involved on the science communication side and talking more to a general audience. I think it would have been really cool to understand kind of the range of careers around that yeah, that type of skill set. Same with science policy. That's not something I knew until I went to that conference, AAAS, like my third or fourth year of grad school. And like I said, that was life-changing for me. That was like, I went there, I met these people with these jobs, and I was like, you get to do this? Like, you get to like talk about science and talk about funding and talk about all of these like important infrastructure elements of science that I personally find a lot more fascinating than oftentimes the actual process of doing science. Like, learning that earlier on would have been pretty amazing. Next question, if you could give advice to a second year student about what to focus on for the rest of their time in grad school, what would you say? The hardest thing about grad school is knowing what you want to get out of it. And I think that is a question that's going to evolve for a lot of people, especially those of us who go straight from undergrad into grad school. So I think what I would advise any second year student to do is to make sure that they have kind of like an eye on the end of the road. It feels super far away when you're in your second year. You're like, you barely starting your project, so it's impossible to imagine that there's going to be an end to it. But I think it's important to keep in mind that there will be an end to it, and you want to keep yourself like preparing for it. You don't need to have your career figured out. You don't need to have your next steps figured out. But keeping in the back of your mind that you should be taking the time to think about it is really important. It's really easy to fall in the trap of thinking you should be spending all of your time in lab and doing your research. But you should also take time to, go to career development workshops or go to conferences that will help you figure out what it is you want to do next, because that is actually what you're there for. It is school. It's about training yourself for a career. And the research that you do as a grad student is not going to define you for the rest of your life. So you want to be able to figure out how to use it to figure out your next steps. Next question is, what was the most transferable skill you learned? Project management, hands down. Grad school is basically one super long and yet also super intensive course in project management. I was given a project, and I then had to figure out over multiple years how to actually conceive of the project, how to run the project, how to troubleshoot it, how to figure out how to execute things, how to then plan next steps, how to like move on to different areas of the project, how to take on other people who are going to be involved in the project, managing other people. There are just so many aspects to doing your dissertation that are not just about the science itself, and that you can translate into working outside of the lab. Next question, can you talk a little bit about your internship? So I've talked about my internship in a few different venues. I've talked a little bit about it in a video. I also did an interview with the Science for Progress podcast where I talked about it. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but basically what I'll say is I decided to do an internship out of my PhD because I knew I was making this career transition away from, working in research to something more science writing and communication oriented. And I applied for a lot of internships that were related to science writing, related to science communication. And one of the most helpful things for me that I did was actually go to an internship fair last year. So this was at AAAS in 2018. If you're interested in science writing and you're in the US, definitely join the National Association of Science Writers as a student, if you're a student, and go to this internship fair. You basically get to talk to a lot of people from a lot of different organizations, both media organizations, from universities, people who are representing their universities, from PR firms. And that was really helpful for me for figuring out what parts of my background people were interested in and what parts were really applicable to the things that I was applying for. So yeah, first step of the process is just figuring out what internships are out there. Second step is applying for them. And I think the most important thing you can do is figure out how to market yourself, how to explain what it is you do and what it is you're able to do, what it is you're going to bring to any internship. And then obviously going through that whole process of applying, which it's rough. I had some interviews that I thought I did really well on, and then ultimately didn't get the internship. There's some places that don't respond to you at all. There's some places that, eventually things work out. If there's more stuff, like more specific aspects of the internship, let me know what you're wondering about, and I might get back to this in another video, or I'll reply to your questions in the comments and see kind of what else I can kind of help people understand, because I know that navigating internships, it can be very overwhelming and kind of intimidating, but it's such a big thing to get into that it's also a little bit overwhelming and intimidating for me to figure out what's most helpful for people to know about. Last question, not quite related to your channel content, but I'd love to know more about your cat. And I would argue that there's nothing more relevant to my channel content than my cat, because yeah, he's in like every video. It's your time to shine. So this is Bastion. In my family, because we are Bengali and we have nicknames for everything, he is called Butababu. So I adopted him about 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years this summer. So when I adopted him, he was about like 7-ish years old, which makes him now about 11-ish. So the thing that like I remember was really striking when I first met him was that he was actually like kind of, you know, in this no cage, no kill shelter, he was just like up on a ledge away from all the other cats. But he is a very aggressive headbutter. And so if you just like would put your fist out, he would like headbutt your fist. He's the best cat. He's the best. Everyone says it. And I firmly believe that every cat is the best cat, but like also your own cat is always the best cat. So like I acknowledge I'm biased, but he is like the best cat. He's like not mean. He's super chill. He's got like the same neuroses that I do about people. I think that's like why we connect, kind of, right, cat? Right? Like he like wants to be around people. He's just also terrified of them, and like I connect with that deeply. Like I understand that sentiment. I too really want the attention of everyone around me, but also am terrified of everyone around me. So like we get each other. He is tremendously greedy. Between my roommates and me, he's always trying to trick us into thinking that no one's fed him, which is bullshit. He is full of lies, but he's so cute when he's lying that it's worth it. You see him in my videos a lot. He has this like habit of like, he'll be chilling and then all of a sudden I'll just start talking to a camera and he's just like, it's my time to shine. I'm gonna be all over the camera. I'm gonna be super hyper. So a lot of times I have to actually feed him before I start filming because it's the only way to get him to sort of like calm down, which is kind of why he's sort of antsy right now, because he wants to be on camera, but he also wants to be fed, and you can't have everything, dude. You can't. I adopted him when he was 7, and I will say he was like he's my first cat. And if you're like me and you also have not had a cat and you want to get a cat, I think it's a good idea to go with an older cat. He kind of came with this like personality fully programmed, and like he had sort of had his shit figured out, which was great. I definitely want to get kittens in the future, but I think starting with an old cat who's also somehow magically the best cat was like one of the best things that happened to me. Highly recommend cats. So thank you guys for your questions. Thanks for sticking through this whole video and letting me talk about all my career transitions and everything. And I hope this was fun for you guys. And yeah, bye.